Hey, Nick Santonastasso here. Listen, this interview you're about to watch is worth over $1 billion, and I'll tell you why. Listen, I met Russell Brunson through Instagram. We were both wrestlers, and he was like, man, I want to come out and do something with you. And so we beat my butt in the wrestling room, but what we also did was I was looking at this and I found one of the old interviews when I interviewed Russell where he shared some of his greatest secrets. Listen, this man you're about to watch is the most genius marketer living right now. And this was before his company was worth $1 billion in evaluation, and now it's over $1 billion. He dropped some secrets in this interview, so make sure you get your pens, your notepads, take some notes, because we're about to go to school and learn some things.
I think the biggest piece of advice I could give a new entrepreneur is, again, I think most people get in the business because they want to make money, and that's what they think the driving force is. But if you feel drawn to this, I believe that's a physical calling from God. I believe that with all my heart. And I think that if you understand that, this is a calling from God, and I think each of us have been called to serve a specific group of people. I was called to serve entrepreneurs. You guys, everyone's got their own calling. And I think if you look at it that way through the lens of this isn't just, I'm trying to make money, trying to get financially free, but it's this is a calling. And I've been called to serve a group of people. I got to figure out who those people are. Who are those people? And then go interview the experts in that space, because you know that you're being called that, you got to step up. You got to figure out how to serve these people to the best of your ability. If you do that, all the money will come, all the things, all those good things will come, all the stuff you're looking for. But it's understanding that at a deep level. Again, if you're here, if you're listening to this, you felt that tug. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here, right? You felt that thing, and it's more than just whatever. It's a literal calling from God, and you've been called to serve a group of people. And so look at it through that lens. It changes everything.
Welcome back to the Victorious Podcast, where we interview people who are living life on purpose. Today, I'm with one co-host, my buddy
Don Haley.
And our other co-host is in Russia for the holidays. We're sending love your way, brother. And today, to the man to the right is an amazing man. I think a pioneer in the industry, but someone who there's not many people inspire me. But this guy inspires me, and he's not only an amazing entrepreneur and a pioneer, but he's also, or was once, we're always wrestlers. Well, we were a wrestler, an amazing father, an amazing dad, an amazing leader. The founder of ClickFunnels, Russell Brunson. Give me something, brother. Thanks for coming.
Heck yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
And as we said, this is one of our first in-person podcasts in a while since COVID. So we're glad to be here in Boise, Idaho, which comes to my first question. Why are you in Boise, Idaho?
It's actually because of wrestling. So I wrestled in high school, and then I got a scholarship to Brigham Young University. I wrestled my freshman year there, and then they cut the wrestling team. And it was funny because when they cut the wrestling team, they told all the wrestlers, hey, if you stay here, we'll cover your scholarship for the rest of the time you're in college. And I was like, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't come to school to go to school. I came to wrestle. And me and my roommate were only two that left. Everyone else stayed there, and we left. He went to Iowa State. I came to Boise State, and I've been here ever since. So
that's legit. What got you? Because audience, I told him, I said, before we get into the podcast, or when we start, I'm going to talk about wrestling because it's near dear to my heart. It saved my life. And so I want to know who got you into wrestling, or how was that inspired? Because I know for me it was my brother. I wanted to be just like my brother. So what was that for you? How did you get into that?
For me, it was my dad. So my dad was a wrestler, and I guess when I was really little, they said I wrestled for a year. I have some pictures of it, but I guess I hated it, and I was the worst at it, and so they pulled me out, and so I didn't wrestle again. And then 8th grade, one of my neighbors started wrestling, and my dad found out. My dad's like, we got to wrestle. And I was like, no, Dad, I play basketball. I wasn't good, but I'm a basketball player. And he's like, no, you're a wrestler. And he forced me to go to this wrestling practice. And I was like, I don't want to go. But I remember him used to always tell stories about wrestling and weight cutting and stuff. So I went, and I remember my 8th grade season, I went, and I was not good. It was really bad. And I was just like, well, I'm going to wrestle 9th grade, and then I'm going to quit and go back for the basketball team. That was my whole plan. And I remember my freshman year, I started wrestling, and they had wrestle-offs, and I wrestled, I was 3rd string. I wrestled the JV guy, and I don't know how to this day, but somehow I beat him, which meant I was going to wrestle JV. And I was just like, I'm going to be on the gym, on the mats. I was so excited. And so I told my dad, he was all excited. And I remember weigh-ins happened. And you know how weigh-ins work. You walk in, it's the most awkward thing as a teenager. You're in your tighty-whities, a bunch of other dudes, and you're just like, this is the worst experience ever. And I walk in, they would call my weight class. I get on the scale, and I get off, and they call my guy I'm going to wrestle. And he gets on the scale, and the dude has a full-blown mustache. And to this day, I still can't grow a mustache. And I was like, that guy's a grown man. He's going to destroy. I was so scared. I remember calling my dad. I was like, I don't know if this guy's got a mustache, Dad. I don't know if you should even come. And anyway, so we get to the match, and we're in the gym, in the high school gym, and it's JV. So there's no one in the stands except for my mom and my dad. And I walk out. The guy with the mustache walks out, and I'm like, I'm going to get killed. This is so horrible. And we start wrestling, and I don't remember what happens. All I remember is when the match ended, I got my hand raised, and I looked in the stands. I saw my dad jumping up and down, and I was like, this is the greatest feeling I've ever felt in my life. And that day is the day I became a wrestler. I'm like, this is all I want to do for the rest of my life. And it became my obsession. And from that point until till I, till my end of college. So that was all I thought about, all I did, that was my life.
So you went to Brigham on a scholarship for wrestling?
Yep. Yeah. So in high school, I was a state champ in high school. I took second place in the nation in high school and was All-American. And then went to BYU, wrestled in freshman year there, and they cut the team. And then my last 4 years at Boise State.
So real quick, so you beat the guy with the mustache, right? I think also because we were talking about how I think we bring a lot of skills from wrestling into business. And the one thing that at least I look for in business is like proof of concept. Once I get proof of concept, which is certainty, confidence, whatever you want to call it, self-worth, then I'm like, oh, this works. I'm going to invest in it. And so I feel like you beating the guy with the mustache was like that first proof of concept of like, I could do this. And I remember too with weigh-ins, I was like the opposite because no legs, one arm. If you're curious of what I weighed 80 pounds. And in order to be eligible for varsity, I had to weigh 85. And so everybody's in weigh-ins and I'm stuffing my face and everyone's like starving. And like, I'm like, don't look at me. I'm just like pounding Gatorades, or like, they're like, you should put weights in your pants. I'm like, no, they'll hear it when I walk around, but I was always looking for creative ways to make weight. But
that's awesome.
From beating that kid, because I know that this would apply in business as well. How did you learn, or drilling? Like what was your mentality going into it? Did you model someone who was successful, or did you have someone that was very competitive? Like what did that look like?
Yeah, a couple things. So I remember my that season, when the season got done, I remember two guys in my high school had made it to the state tournament and were like supposed to win. And I remember they actually both ended up winning the state tournament. My dad took me there and we filmed the matches. And there's this little guy, he was like a 112 pounder named Matt Wood. And he ended up being a 3-time state champ. And I remember my dad was just like, this guy's so good. So we filmed what he was doing. And he did this move that to this day, like I swear I'm the only person that still does this move. It's my favorite move. Like I can get it on anybody. It's a cheap tilt. And he just thrashed everyone this cheap tilt. And I was like, I have to learn that move. And so all summer long, all match, everything like that is all I just drill over and over and over again, to the point where I can literally get it on anybody. Even in college, it's like nobody uses that move. Like coach is like, there's other moves that are better. I'm like, yeah, but this one I get on everybody. And like from any position, like I'll be getting pinned and somehow like flip out and then the guy, I got a cheap tilt again. And it would come from like seeing that and modeling it over and over. So a lot of it was that. The other side of it,
you have to do that move on Nick today.
Oh, it's gonna.
Does it require limbs? Because I was like, if it's like a leg move,
as long as I got that arm, I'm good. That's all I need. Just one. But the other one is, and this is, I think, will tie into, I know what a lot of the conversation today is going to be about. So my junior year, I came into the season. I was like, I was going to be a state champ. That was like my goal. I was ready. In the very first match, I went against a kid who took second the year before, and I was like, okay. Like, this is my shot to prove that I'm as good as I think I am in my head, right? Yeah. And I go out there and I wrestle him and I get beat pretty good. And it was just like devastating. And my good old dad is there with the video camera, films the whole thing. And I get home that night and I just, just depressed. I want to go hide and just super embarrassed. And so I go to bed that night and my dad jumps up, goes and puts the tape from the camera and thing and starts watching the match over and over. Like, I don't think he slept the entire night, all night long, watching it, taking notes and studying it. And next morning I woke up and getting ready for school. My dad's like, come here. Like, I know how to beat this guy. I'm like, Dad, they know a teenager. Like, Dad, I'm trying to get ready for school. Like, I don't want to do this. He's like, no, come on. He pulls me on the carpet and he's like, show me the move and what he did. And I was just kind of annoyed at first, but he kept showing me and he's like, this is how he did and this is what he did and how his positioning was, and they get to learn from it. And so we practiced that before school, and then I went to school, had practice. After practice, I'm like getting done the match. All of a sudden, my dad like come in the wrestling room with his workout clothes on, and I'm like, oh no. He runs over, he's like, all right, we got to practice this. Like, I know how we saw how he beat you. Let's practice it. And so we practiced it again. And next morning, before school, did it again. And after practice, again. And it wasn't like practice for 2 or 3 minutes. It was like an hour-long practice after practice every single day, practicing literally the moves that this guy beat me on. And I got better and better and better at learning how to do it. And I didn't wrestle the guy again the entire season until the state tournament. He was seed number 1, I was seed number 2, and we're going to the tournament, getting closer and closer. And then the finals, it was me against him. And my dad's like, all right, you've wrestled him every morning and every night for the last 4 months. Like, we know how to beat him. And I was like, okay. And so we started wrestling and went out there. And not only did I beat him, the move that he beat me with is the move that I beat him with. Because I had gotten so good at his moves, countering my dad, like practicing with it, and I ended up beating him with that. And it was just like such a big testament to like, to what I think a lot of people struggle with in business or life in general. Like, they lose and they're like, I lost. Yeah. And what I learned from my dad that day was like, if you lose, that's not you lost. It's like, okay, we figured out what was wrong. Now we can make adjustments. Now we can make the tweaks and the changes and figure out how to win. And so it's funny because in business now we're the same way. We launched a funnel, and you can ask my team, like, we launched it. I'm like, it's not going to work. Let's get it out there. And we start driving traffic and look at the stats, and we figure out all the tweaks and the changes to figure out how to make it work. And that was like, from wrestling, probably the biggest lesson I got was just that of like failing quickly and then seeing what the problems were. And then that's where you start making the tweaks and the adjustments and the changes to get better and better and better over time.
Yeah, failing forward, adapting.
Yeah.
We always do that.
Yeah.
And just put yourself in there, put yourself in an environment to fail. Because if you're not there, you're not going to learn, you're not going to adapt, you're not going to succeed. So.
Yeah, I think that's why so many athletes do good in business, other parts of life too, because they're used to that. Where most people have never had to go and like step out on a mat or step into basketball or whatever the sport is and lose, right? Like they've sheltered themselves their whole life and they've never had that experience. Where in sports you lose over and over and over again. You get used to that and it's less scary. And that's why I've seen so many entrepreneurs who are athletes who have success, because it's not like they're not the same fear of failure that I think a lot of people do, because they're like, okay, if I fail, it's just a learning point, not I'm not a failure. Like, just the process didn't work. Let me figure out what tweaks I need to make.
Yeah. Well, thanks for diving into that, because I want to let the audience know he just didn't become a state champion overnight, right? Like he practiced, and I think as well as for me is like everything was hard. You know, when I was born, like everything was hard, right? And so I always tell people, like, if you going into business or entrepreneurship, if you have a bad relationship with failure and rejection, this is the wrong thing for you, because we're going to experience it all the time, right? And so failure is feedback. Like Don was saying, the faster you fail, you tweak and you come back and you figure out what can you learn from it. I think the majority of people, though, they ask the disempowering question, which is like, why did I fail? And why does this happen to me? Yeah, what's wrong with me, right? And like the way that our brain works is it's a problem solver. So if you ask a bad question, you're going to get a bad answer. And so I like to ask, even teach the kids this, is like, what did I learn from this? And that way you take a winning lesson from it. And there's a quote by Nelson Mandela that I love. He says, in life, I don't lose, I only win or learn. But it's our job to program our brain to win or learn. We don't just always win or learn, right? Were you a good student? Because I think there's a lot of people that can relate, I myself included. I didn't enjoy school, and since I didn't enjoy school, I didn't excel at school, I had beliefs that I was a bad student, that I sucked at learning, that I wasn't good at receiving information and knowledge. So what are your thoughts on? I
was the same way. I literally always thought I was dumb until when I started my business. Was the first time that I didn't think I always thought, I don't know if I thought I was slow or something, but I couldn't understand the teachers. And I think I have some form of ADD for sure, because it's like, it was just struggling, they talking, and it was just like, you know what I mean? It was hard to pay attention, and I couldn't regurgitate the stuff they talked about a lot of times. And I struggled in school a lot. In fact, I still remember to this day, it was my senior year in college, or maybe my junior year, but when I first started this business. And like, I thought I didn't like reading, because I never read a book that I liked. And I was just like, I didn't like enjoy learning, because I never had something to apply it to. It was just like, oh, and when I started my little business at the very beginning, it was interesting, because I remember I went to my very first event, and there was a speaker, and he talked about something, and it was just like, I can't remember what it was, but he gave some idea, and I was like, huh. So I came back and I applied that to my little business, and my little business was like really little, like maybe $100 a week, and I was like, but I did apply that little thing, and it made more money, and I was like, wait, I learned something, I applied it, and something like it grew, and I was like, that was amazing. I was like, I wonder if I can learn anything else. So I went to another seminar, I started taking better notes, like that person said this, and that person said, I get 3 or 4 nuggets, and I go back and I apply it, and I was like, made more money. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like the greatest game in the world. Like, this is amazing. And then I was like, I wonder if there's anything good in books. And I remember reading my first book, and I was just like, there's like so many things in here. And I was like, and then you see my library back here, like I became obsessed with like reading and books. And like, because every book, I might find 1 or 2 little gold nuggets that I take out and I apply it to my business or my thing, and it would grow. And I started doing the same to my health and my relationships and different parts of my life that I cared about. I started studying, like trying to find things I could learn, and then looking for those little things and applying them. And I think as soon as I realized that, I was like, I'm not dumb. I just never had something to apply my knowledge towards. And so it's hard for me to get excited or motivated to do it. And as soon as I had something to apply it towards, then it was like, I'm not dumb. Like I'm as smart as anyone else. I can go find the answers, but I just had to be excited by it. And I think that's one of the disservices of school a lot of times. And I see with my kids now, where it's like they're reading a book that they don't care about, or writing a paper on something that, I was like, what do you want to write a paper on? Like, what do you care about? Like, let's do that, because then you'll be engaged and fired up about it. Yeah. I think but school is definitely hard for me until I found something that was exciting for me.
Because we all, go ahead. But we all have different tastes of learning.
I was going to ask the journey into like internet marketing. So you said that $100 business. So what was that first step? What was that, that nugget that you got that was like, oh, wow, this is where I want to go?
Yeah. So before I started making any money, I was trying all sorts of stuff. So I was going to like thrift stores and buying garbage and trying to sell it on eBay. It just didn't work very well. I tried a lot of different things. I remember it was after I bought a bunch of stuff at a thrift store, and I was, and they're all different shapes and sizes. Like one was a Michael Jackson record. I'm like, this is going to be worth tons of money, right? And it wasn't. And then the other things, but they're all like different sizes. So I'm coming home like with like wheelbarrows full of garbage, and then like I sell them on eBay, and then I have to like find boxes to fit all this stuff. It was like so hard. I remember one day I was at the post office, like trying to ship off all these things I'd sold on eBay, and I'd literally made maybe like $4 or $5 profit. Like it was like, this is a lot of work for $4. And I was sitting there, and in the checkout line, there was a guy, and he had this big, huge box of, I found out later, there were DVDs, like probably 500 DVDs that were in these little cases. And I was like, and I asked him like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, this is my business. I'm like, what's your business? He's like, I sell information on these little CDs and DVDs. And I was like, well, how's it work? He's like, well, someone buys it, and then I just burn a copy of it, and I put it in these envelopes, and I go out. And I remember thinking, the big thing in my head was like, there's only one size envelope. Like, he doesn't have to go buy boxes for this and this. Like, I was like, they're all the same size. And so I was like, I need to sell stuff on CDs, like information. I don't know how to do that, but that was like the idea, because then all the packaging would be the same, and it'd be so much easier to carry that in the post office in these random boxes. And so that kind of started me on this journey of like, how does that work? And then learning like about information, like people buy information, and I didn't know that was a thing, and I was trying to learn. And so the very first information product I ever created was a DVD teaching people how to make potato guns. That was my first product ever, right? And
my brother had one when he was younger.
Yeah,
probably you.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So that was my first thing. I remember I created it, and I put it together, and I put it in a thing, and I had a DVD, and I tried to sell it first, and then nobody was buying it. I'm like, dang it! Like, okay, how do you sell these things? And that's when I started learning. It started me on this journey of like all the things. Like, well, you can't just put it online and hope someone buys it. You have to have like good copy or good words. The words on a page that sell it. And so I had to like learn like, well, how do you write a headline? So I had to learn that part, and I started kind of writing a sales letter. And then it was like, okay, now I have a sales letter and a DVD. How do I get people to show up? I'm like, well, you have to drive traffic. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. Like, traffic is like ads. I'm like, I don't have any money. They're like, well, if you do it right, you spend less money than you make, and you don't have to have money. You just, and so back then is when Google was just starting their advertising platform. So I went to Google, and I set up a Google AdWords account, and I was just like, my keywords were potato gun and spud gun. The only two words I knew that keywords, I was like, I'll pay, I don't know, 25 cents a click. And I was like, I just hope I don't run out of money before someone buys a DVD. And I set it up, and I clicked go, and I was waiting. And then the very first, it took 2 or 3 days. I think I'd spent, I don't know, maybe $15, $20. I'm stressing out. Like, my wife's going to kill me. Like, I don't have any money for this. And then the first DVD for like $37 sold. And I was like, oh, like I made like $5. Like, and I had like one DVD to send out. Like, it was like, that was proof of concept again. Yeah, I was like, okay, this is amazing. And so I can't remember what it was at the event. It was something, it was a guy named Michael Fortin. He was a copywriter, but he was talking about split testing things, and he split tested different color headlines. And I think that was the first one, like a red headline versus a blue headline or something like that. It was just a little thing that I was like, huh. So I went home, and I just changed the color of my headline, and sure enough, my conversions went up. And that's when I was just like, okay, this is amazing. This is like the greatest game of all time. This is gonna be so much fun.
Just for perspective, what year was that?
I was a senior in college, so it'd be 2003, 2002, something like that.
Wow.
I'm really bad at remembering years.
You've been in the game.
Talking about, right? Like, where, not to make you feel any age or whatever, but I think I was in like elementary school, and he was making funnels, So like,
yeah, I have 18 years on this journey now. It's crazy.
That's wild. Yeah, because I think oftentimes people see people for where they are currently, right? And they don't see the journey, don't see the trial and error, the split test, the uncertainty, the freaking out because I just spent $15 on ads back in 2003. And you mentioned the information age. What are your thoughts? Would you agree that now more than ever that people are, transitioning into the information age? Because I think during this unprecedented time, like school gets shut down and people are going to virtual events and they're getting information that way. And I know that some companies are actually hiring people based off their skills and the value that they bring, which is amazing. Like, as entrepreneurs, that's how we show up. But what are your thoughts on where we are right now in the information age?
Yeah, I am the biggest fan. I think information business is the greatest business in the world. It was funny because a lot of people are like, well, I'm not in information business, therefore I can't. They like tune off when they say that. And I said, you guys understand, like, I'm not in the information business either. I sell software. Right? Like, my company's a software company, but we use information products to get customers in, to train them, to educate them, to make it so we can get customers for free. Like information is it's the unique thing that sets us all apart right now, right? Because all of us have our own perspective and our own way we do things, and I think that, you know, it's, a lot of times people are like, well, I can't do it because there's already 20 people that teach the same thing I teach or whatever. But it's like, you have to understand everyone learns different ways. Some people do not like me. Some people probably don't like you guys, right? Like everyone's got different flavors. It's like, well, that's fine. Like if you don't like me, I hope that you learn from somebody. Like there's a lot of people teaching what I teach, teaching funnels and things like that. Like if you don't connect with me, connect with someone else. But I think that's the biggest thing to understand is like everyone, like when you do it and you put yourself out there, your people will find you. In fact, there's a quote in the New Testament. Jesus Christ said, he said that my sheep will hear my voice and they'll find my fold. And they'll come to me, right? Like it's the same thing in this world, right? Like all of us, we're given our God gives us talents and thoughts and ideas and a voice to go out there and put our message out, right? And not everyone's going to resonate with your message. In fact, no matter who you are, half the world's going to hate you for your beliefs, and then the other half, you know, another 40% aren't going to care, but 10% of the people, those are your sheep. Those are your people that are going to hear your voice and they're going to come to you. I remember when I got started in this business, like when I started trying to teach people what I do, this internet marketing game, and that was probably 15 years ago. And I would do these events. I'd show up and there'd be like, I remember one time we promoted this event on radio and we had, I don't know, a couple hundred people sign up for it. And I show up and there were 2 people in the room. And I was just like, oh, this is horrible. It was so embarrassing. And I did my presentation though. And I kept doing it. And I go to another event. They'd be like, you know, the promoter would be like, oh, there's gonna be 500 people in the room. And you show up and there's like 14 and like half of them are speakers. And I'm like, oh, and I was just kept doing that. But it didn't matter to me because like I was so excited about my message. Like I just wanted to tell everybody. And so I kept talking. And now, you know, fast forward, you know, a decade and a half later, it's still like crazy. Like we go to our funnel hacking live event and there's 5,000 funnel hackers who are obsessed with funnels and they're going crazy. And I'm like, every time I like pinch myself, I'm like, I remember like nobody would like, I was so excited and nobody cared. And now all these people are excited too because I was so excited. And I continue to be excited for a decade and a half. And I think that's the thing people understand is like, it's not going to become an overnight success. Like you're not just going to put something out there and it's going to be huge, but it's like, if you find something you're really passionate about, the information or the ideas that you're passionate about, like start sharing them and keep doing that consistently. And if you do it consistently long enough, like your people will find you. And I think a lot of it is, like the world wants to prove that you're worthy of it. And you've proved that you're worthy by consistently doing it, right? If you're excited and you show up for a week or a month or a year, you're probably not going to get what you want out of it. But if you show up consistently for a year, for a decade and keep doing it, like it's crazy. I had this conversation with Tony when we were in Fiji, Tony Robbins, and he was just like, man, it's crazy how fulfilling life has become because we've done this consistently for so long. And most people never do. But yeah, to kind of come back to information, I think that it's the best business in the world, no matter what you're selling. Like, I have chiropractors now who are creating information products to get customers. And it's like, they make more money on the information side of the business than they do the chiropractor, but that's what gets people in the door and gets you the ability to serve them and to help them, right? Or any business, like it's the fuel, I think, of every business is understanding the information business.
I love that. Especially the consistency is key.
Yeah.
And now we're pivoting to the world, you know, where we're at in the world, right? The uncertainty, the COVID times, like, where does someone go that doesn't have an information product that has like potentially like the live, for us, like we had to pivot out of the live events business. So for someone that is uncertain of the future, when things are going to be opening up, uncertain when, you know, their job's going to come back, what do you recommend someone like in the beginning stages of info products or in the beginning stages of anything like success products? Where would you point them? I know maybe your products, but just in general, just in general, where would you put them? Where would you recommend them to go?
I think the biggest thing is, I'm trying to think back when I first got started. Like I remember I was doing my potato gun DVD. Like I didn't know how to do anything. I was just like, okay, this is one thing that I know something about. So I'm gonna go create something. And it was horrible. Like if you go back and watch the videos, like we didn't even have a video camera. We had to borrow a video camera from someone. We didn't have anywhere to film it. So like we broke into Boise State, the college on a Saturday. We found a whiteboard and like hoping and like, we like literally like we're drawing on this whiteboard, like filming stuff. We were in Home Depot, like filming ourselves buying the pipes. We got kicked out of 2 Home Depots on the way because people were like, what are you doing? Like, we're filming us making potato guns. And they're like, you can't do that. Like, we're gonna go to jail. So they kicked us out. Like, it was horrible. And like the production quality, like I was awkward and nervous but like we just did it, right? And I think the biggest thing is figuring out for anybody, it's like the first step is like, what are you like super passionate about? And I think a lot of times people think that they're going to make money with what they do for a living. And I don't think you should look at, like I have friends like, I'm an engineer. How am I going to make money? It's like, that's your day job. Like, what are you passionate about? What's the thing that you freak out about that at night you're reading blogs and you're listening to podcasts and you're talking? That's the world you should be in, right? That's something you're uniquely qualified for. That's exciting. Like, don't confuse like your life mission with your job. Like, I think a lot of times people confuse it. Sometimes they're the same, but usually they're not, right? Like, I was going to be a wrestling coach. Like, that was going to be my life. So like, and I actually bought WrestlingSecrets.com. So someday there's going to be a product there, but I don't know what it is yet. But that wasn't my passion. I mean, that was my passion, but it wasn't my business, right? My business is like, we're something that people are gonna like. There's already people that are rabidly excited by it, right? So it's figuring what that is, and then it's kind of looking around and saying, okay, well, what am I like? How am I unique? Like, what do I have that's different? And at first, the answer is probably nothing. Like, you know, like when I got started in the marketing game, I wasn't unique at all. I was just excited by it. And so what I did, the first phase for me is I took on the role of the reporter, which is kind of like this, right? And I was like, well, who are the best in the world? And back then there weren't podcasts, and they didn't even have webinars. We used to do teleseminars. So like I would call them up, like, hey, can I do a teleseminar interview with you? An interview on the phone, and I asked hundreds of people, and most of them were really gracious. I'm like, sure, like I'll let you do that. And so I remember calling like the best PPC guy, like pay-per-click guy in the world at the time. And on the phone, I clicked, and I had this little tape recorder I bought from Radio Shack that hooked in my phone system, and I'd click record on my cassette tape, and I'd call him, and I'd ask him questions, and he'd like tell me all the answers, and I like got live coaching from this person on that, and I had it on my little tape. And I called the next guy who was a really good SEO guy, and I asked him all my questions, and it recorded on my tape. And then someone who was really good at just all these different marketing topics, and I was getting these interviews from people, and it was amazing. And one of the guys I interviewed during the time, his name was Vince James, and he had launched a supplement company through direct mail, and he made, as a 28-year-old kid, made $100 million in 23 months.
Wow.
And I read his book, and I was like, can I interview? And he was super cool. It's like, yeah, go for it. So I interviewed him on a Saturday, and I interviewed him for 3 hours. And then when it got done, I still had more questions. He's like, hey, call me next Saturday. We'll do it again. I'm like, are you serious? Oh, so I did it again. So we ended up interviewing for 6 hours. And I had these like cassette tapes I'm putting in and out, trying to record these things. And then when it got done, he was like, yeah, you can do whatever you want with the tapes. He's like, just send me a copy because I might use them for something, but you can do whatever you want with them. I'm like, all right. So I had these tapes, and I didn't know what to do for a long time. And eventually I figured out how to like get them off the tapes onto like, you know, to an MP3 file, like a whole nother process. I had to figure, like, it's so much easier today now, guys. You click record and it's there. But I got these things in 6 hours. Like, this is really, really good. And I was like, I wonder if maybe this is my first product. Like, I didn't know. I had a couple other products, but nothing that was like a huge home run. But I took that interview of that guy and I put it online, and I made a little sales page for it. And I told the story behind this guy and his story and how he let me interview him for 6 hours, how cool it was. And it was one of my very first funnels we launched. And it was just my interview with the guy, and we launched it. And for some reason it was one of those ones that just took off. And it was the first product I ever created that did over $1 million in sales. In fact, after we invented the 2 Comma Club Award, I made a 2 Comma Club Award for that product for myself, because I was like, I earned that. It was the first time I ever got $1 million in a thing. And it was an interview with someone else. It wasn't even my content. It was just me interviewing this person who had a really fascinating story and taking that. So I think for someone who's just getting started, like I would look at something like that, like what are you super passionate about, and go start interviewing them. You guys flew here to interview me. You've flown other places. You're capturing interviews. Like, there's so much value in that information. And sometimes you go for free on podcasts, but other times it could be something that turns into a paid product. And I still interview people a lot today, and I turn them into products that we sell, or bonuses for products and things like that. But a couple things it does. Number one is, by interviewing people, it helps you to like figure out where you fit the ecosystem, right? Because I remember when I was doing that, I was learning from the best SEO guy and PPC guy and this guy, like all these different people that I was learning from. And I learned great stuff from all of them. But like the thing that was most fascinating to me was this funnel piece, right? No one was really talking about it. But I was like, that's the thing that I'm so excited by. And I remember building my own funnels. I would geek out, and I spent so much time, like it was just so much fun for me. And so that became, and eventually like I became the guy who talked about funnels. And eventually we built software, and like that kind of naturally became my thing. But I didn't know that going into it. Just that was the thing that was most exciting to me. And so I think going into a market that you're excited by, interviewing a ton of people, and then you start figuring out like where's your unique spot in that ecosystem? Where do you fit? Like, where's your message different? And then while you're doing that process, was really cool is like all my friends in the business today, like that's how I met them. That's how I built relationships, by interviewing them, right? And to this day, like most of those guys are still amazing friends. That's how I got access to Tony, was through an interview I did with someone who ended up knowing Tony, and that got me in that door and this door. And like, it's just, it's fascinating. So I think that's how I would start any information business, is like figure out the market, find all the people who are the leaders, go and start interviewing them, and just that'll start opening all the doors you need to start the business.
That is a wrap on part 1 of the interview. I hope you got so much value value. I also want to honor and commend Russell for having the confidence to not sell his company at $1 billion because he wanted to create ClickFunnels 2.0. It is absolutely insane. And for you watched this whole entire video, you watched the whole part 1 of the interview. I want to congratulate you because most people aren't sitting on YouTube watching things that could change their life. They're watching cats and pianos and stuff. You, my friend, are someone who values the investment in yourself and you value the knowledge that you're watching, so I want to honor and commend you. By the way, you want to see part 2 of the interview, click the subscribe button so you can be notified as soon as that part drops. And then in the description, I want to give you access to my book. This is a book that shares some of my greatest stories and how I got the body, the mind, the relationships, and wealth, even with no legs and 1 arm. And then under that, I'm also doing a 5-day challenge where I'm gonna dive deep on the 7 simple steps so you can earn success. It's one of my greatest events and I wanna give you access to it. It's in the description. I look forward to seeing you on the other side.